If we're talking the greatest players at their peak, Larry Bird should be among the top of everyone's list. Among many reasons is for what he accomplished from 1984 to 1986. There are only a handful of players who can match what he did. The more deeply we look into those seasons, the more convinced we'll be that we'll never see anything like Larry Legend again. Here's a simplistic overview of his major accomplishments during that stretch. 2 titles in 3 straight finals appearances, back-to-back MVPs, 2 finals MVPs, 3 first-team All-NBA selections, and 1 second-team All-NBA defensive selection. In one of the most competitive eras of basketball, he was unquestionably the league's best player. Did you know that there have only been 3 players that have ever won the MVP award in 3 consecutive seasons? He's in the same company as Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. It's no wonder that the Celtics won over 62 games in each of those 3 seasons. For the first 4 years of his career, he was always in the discussion of being the league's best player. But there's just something different about the level that he was playing from 1984 and onward. What exactly changed? For one, they made one important personnel move. They named K.C. Jones as the head coach. He was nowhere near the drill sergeant that Bill Fitch was. His more liberal approach allowed Larry to control the offense more than usual. Their offense was designed for him to handle the ball a lot, and that opened up opportunities for him to create so many points for his team. They had the ultimate advantage that no other team had. They had a player that had the ability to play all 5 positions at the highest level. He was the best outside shooter, he had the best court vision behind Magic Johnson, and he was rebounding better than 70% of the starting centers. Frederick Waterman for UPI Sports said it best when he wrote this about Bird in '84. He's a blue-collar player with creativity. Larry Bird's every move on the court has a purpose. In a game, Bird controls the Celtics using his combined abilities of a forward, guard, and center to take advantage of situations before they exist. At 6'9", the 5-year Celtics veteran has the inside moves of a forward, the passing and outside shooting of a guard, and the position rebounding of a center." End of quote. Then K.C. Jones went as far as to say that he didn't care about his athletic ability, that he's the best all-around player that he's ever seen. The numbers that he posted in 1984 indicate how great he was in every facet of the game. He averaged 24.2 points on 49% shooting, 10.1 rebounds, 6.6 assists, and 1.8 steals per game. Out of all the talented players that were on the team, he was the one that stood out in every possession. But in the postseason, he had what many consider as his greatest individual playoff run. His numbers increased in nearly every single category. He averaged his playoff career high of 27.5 points on 52% shooting, 11 rebounds, 5.9 assists, 2.3 steals, and 1.2 blocks per game. From an analytical perspective, he posted the 5th highest value over replacement player rating and the 12th highest win shares. In every single series, he proved that there wasn't a single weakness in his game. In the first round against the Washington Bullets, the Washington Post called him the most fluid inside player. He was more than capable of scoring from the block, and his remarkable court vision allowed him to find cutters and players who were open on the perimeter. And although he wasn't a lockdown defender, his role as a free safety allowed him to come from the weak side and prevent easy buckets with a block. It should be no surprise that he averaged 2.3 blocks and 2 steals per game for the series. In the second round, they were playing against the top scorer, Bernard King. He just finished torching the Detroit Pistons in the first round. He averaged the insane stat line of 42.6 points per game on 60% shooting. Larry was going to have to go toe-to-toe with him in the scoring department, and he did exactly that. He ended up having arguably his greatest scoring series of his playoff career. He averaged 30.4 points on 59% shooting. Make no mistake about it, if he had a scorer's mentality, he could have easily won multiple scoring titles. He proved that he could score with the best of them. But the bigger the stakes, the better he played. That was proven when the series was pushed to a 7th game. He had one of his most forgotten legendary moments. He had 39 points on 54% shooting, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, and 3 steals. This is the second highest scoring total for a player that posted a triple-double in a Game 7. His numbers in the conference finals might not be eye-popping, but it was mostly due to all the attention he was receiving from the Milwaukee Bucks. And even then, Bird was able to remain effective and eliminate them in 5 games. This is what the Washington Post published in 1984. In the current playoff series against Milwaukee, Bird has attracted double and triple coverage as if he were dominant center on a mediocre team. But since Bird plays with excellent players and is about as selfish as Mahatma Gandhi, the Milwaukee defense has failed." End of quote. It was a perfect prelude to the most important final series in NBA history. It was the first time that Larry Bird and Magic Johnson faced in the finals. This is when he converted many people into Larry Bird fans for life. That was especially the case in the iconic Game 4. It was all the drama and the true bad blood that existed between these two teams. You could feel the tension and the high stakes that they were playing through. But this is the type of atmosphere that he relishes in. With the game tied with 34 seconds in overtime, he was matched up against his rival. With the world watching, he switched a fadeaway jumper that helped the Celtics even the series. But he wasn't done yet. We also have the Heat game in Game 5. This is where they played under 97 degrees and without any air conditioning. The scene of that game showed how uncomfortable the players were. You had Kareem sucking on oxygen. Robert Parrish was being treated for a leg cramp, and even one of the referees was sidelined because of dehydration. Larry Bird seemed to be the only one enjoying himself. He finished with 34 points on 75% shooting and 17 rebounds. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most efficient scoring game of his playoff career. After the game, he shrugged off his performance by saying this: "It was harder than that back home in the summer." On the other hand, Kareem, one of the most efficient and greatest scorers of all time, finished the game with 19 points on 28% shooting. I'm telling you, Larry Bird was just different. When it was all said and done, he outpaced both teams in points and rebounds. In fact, he nearly averaged 6 more rebounds per game than Kareem did. With so many legendary players fighting for the title, he was unquestionably the best player. Let's review what he did in 1984. He won the MVP, Finals MVP. He led his team to the best record, had a monster Game 7 performance, a game winner in the finals, and an iconic finals performance. Believe it or not, he was just getting started. In the 1984-85 season, he decided to completely take over the offense, and his game went to another stratosphere. His scoring average went up by 4.5 points, and he finished second in the league in scoring. It was the closest he ever got to winning the scoring title. What's even more impressive is that his shooting average went up by 3%, all while leading the NBA in minutes played. The secret to his success was that he shot every day, sometimes for as many as 5 hours. Then we have what K.C. Jones said about Bird's improvement: "Practice and hard work. I've been around basketball for a long time, both as a player and a coach, and I've seen players come and go, but I've yet to find anyone who has Larry's determination or plays with more intensity. He's a student of the game and a perfectionist." End of quote. This was all reflected in the numbers. For the season, he averaged 28.7 points on 52% shooting, 10.5 rebounds, 6.6 assists, 1.6 steals, and 1.2 blocks per game. This is only the 8th time in league history that players average over 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. The numbers are great, but what he was doing on the court was special. That's especially the case when the game was on the line. Against Portland, he made a fall-away jumper in the left corner as the buzzer sounded. He ended that game with 48 points on 63% shooting, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists. Then we have what he did in the very next game against the Pistons. He made this jumper at the buzzer. Isaiah Thomas was so impressed that he put his arm around his shoulder as they headed towards the locker room. That's right, he had back-to-back buzzer beaters. This is exactly why he's considered one of the greatest clutch players ever. But there's nothing more impressive than his career-high performance. Against the Hawks, he had 60 points on 61% shooting, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. He went scorching hot in the second half, but none was more memorable than when Bird tried to bait the referees to call an and one while he converted on a fadeaway three-pointer. It was one of the most memorable heat check games that we've ever seen. It was a type of performance that had people questioning if they're witnessing the greatest player ever. For example, this is what New York Knicks legend Dave DeBusschere said about his level of play. "A lot of players have scored more points, been better passers and rebounders, but rarely has anyone wrapped it all up in one package like he has. He's a great clutch player with a great attitude who leads by example. I would have no problem ranking him as the all-time best." End of quote. If this was how he was being viewed, then it's no wonder that he won a second consecutive MVP by a landslide. In the playoffs, he continued his individual dominance. The Celtics crushed the Cavaliers in the first round, with Bird averaging nearly 35 points per game on 57% shooting. His next victim was the Detroit Pistons. He didn't have one, but two 40-point performances. In both games, he pulled down over 10 rebounds and shot over 50% from the field. If you're keeping track, he had three 40-point performances in his first 10 playoff games. At that point, he averaged a combined 30.3 points on 48% shooting, 10.3 rebounds, and 6.1 assists per game. At this rate, he was going to have one of the greatest playoff runs the league had ever seen. But then, everything changed. It has been reported that he suffered an off-the-court injury when he allegedly threw a punch in a bar. A New York Times article mentioned that his right index finger was swollen to double the size at the first knuckle and that it couldn't bend. It was also reported in the LA Times article that he had bone chips in his right elbow, which makes it very difficult for someone to have full extension. He was dealing with two injuries in his shooting arm. Larry swore it wasn't a big deal, but there's no other way to explain the drop in production. In the final two rounds of the playoffs, he averaged 22.5 points on 43% shooting, 8.1 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. It's fair to ask if the Celtics would have won the title if they had their MVP at full strength. With him struggling, they just didn't have enough firepower to keep up with the Lakers' offensive greatness. If you know anything about this player, you knew that he was going to use this fuel to come back even stronger. He wasn't just trying to win another MVP or even the title. That wasn't going to be enough. It was a way he led the Celtics to a status that only a handful of teams could ever claim. For many people, the 1986 Boston Celtics are the greatest team to ever be assembled. They won 67 games and lost one time at home. Now I know what you're thinking. This is more of a team accomplishment than the efforts of an individual. There were certainly a lot of players that contributed to their overwhelming success, but there is something else that needs to be recognized. Take for instance what Bill Walton mentioned to reporters. This team's personality comes from Larry Bird. Never doubt that. End of quote. His imprint was all over this team. They took from his competitiveness and work ethic. The Celtics became arguably the greatest passing team ever because Larry's unselfishness was contagious. They played the right way because that's how their leader always played. When you see him diving on the floor for loose balls and constantly making the extra pass, you're going to want to imitate him. The Celtics' dominant season is all a part of Larry's legacy, and it says everything that we need to know about what makes him so great. Just like any other team, injuries could have derailed their season and ruined our perception of what they accomplished. For example, Bird started the season struggling because of his lingering back injury. In fact, he said to Sports Illustrated, "My back was so bad in the preseason that really, I almost counted out the whole year." You could tell it was affecting him as he averaged 23.8 points per game on 45% shooting up to the Christmas Day game. So what did he do that allowed Boston to start this season 17-3? He focused on rebounding and passing. Then Kevin McHale missed a total of 14 games. They continued their winning ways thanks to Bird's underrated post-up play. He would station himself on the block, wait for defenders to converge, and he would find open teammates. Whenever he or his team was limited, he knew exactly what adjustments to make. But it's not just the intangibles that make this season so brilliant. For example, he had a 50-point performance against the Dallas Mavericks, and he could have very easily had 2 for the year. He scored 43 points on 71% shooting in just 29 minutes of play against the Cavaliers. Then we have the game against the Blazers, when he had 47 points on 62% shooting, 14 rebounds, 11 assists, and 2 blocks. That also included his game-winning fadeaway that he had in overtime. Believe it or not, that wasn't the most impressive part of that game. 10 of his field goals were shot with his left hand. After this incredible performance, Portland's coach Jack Ramsey called him the greatest clutch player of all time. It's important to establish what people were saying about him during this legendary season. The word GOAT was being tossed around a lot. There was a Sports Illustrated article that year that referenced quotes from various highly regarded former players such as Jerry West, Bob Cousy, and Don Nelson, who all confirmed that his GOAT status was for real. but he needed to get it done in the playoffs, and he gave his greatest all-around postseason run. He averaged 25.9 points on 52% shooting, 9.3 rebounds, 8.2 assists, and 2.1 steals per game. He had a total of 3 triple-doubles, and he also had 5 different games where he shot over 60% from the field. He also averaged 41% from the 3 and 93% from the free throw. That's right, he had a 50-40-90 shooting split for the entire postseason. He's only one of 3 title-winning players to ever accomplish this while starting for their teams. As you can see, the other 2 were just role players. On their road to the finals, they only lost once. In Game 4 of the conference finals against the Bucks, Bird had a 17-point fourth quarter. He outscored Milwaukee in that period. He went scorching hot and he made 4 3-pointers. After the game, Milwaukee coach Don Nelson said, "He's the best player ever. The Celtics play on a different level. Bird? Well, he's on his own level." But the New York Times took it to another level. They wrote this before the start of the finals: "He is playing as well as he has ever played." Among experts, there's little question anymore that Bird does more things better than anyone in history. End of quote. There's levels to this, and there's a reason why Larry Bird had a level named after him. You are going to find this by scrolling through the box score. You needed to watch him affect the game in every possible way. Take for example, the final game of the year. It's Game 6 of the finals against the Houston Rockets. Legendary sports writer Bob Ryan explained it best when he wrote this for the Boston Globe. He didn't make every shot, or grab every rebound, or account for every assist, or make every steal, but he plugged himself in every conceivable aspect of the game to the extent that all the other players had to do was feed off his energy level. As far as his defensive efforts, the article continues saying, Bird was somehow or other playing Ronnie McRae, Ralph Sampson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Robert Reed, Lewis Lloyd, and every other Rocket. End of quote. It's a standard of play that few players have ever been able to meet. A team can only be as good as their best player. If the 1986 Celtics are considered by many as the greatest team of all time, then what does that say about Larry Bird? At this point of his career, he was simply untouchable. But what about you all? What do you remember the most about this 3-year stretch? Who else do you think could rival what he did from 1984 to 1986? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.